Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrifice my time so you don't have to. Honestly, as far as the ratings go, as far as the viewership number goes, it's not that much different than last week. I mean, yes, NXT beat AEW again, but I'm to the point right now where it's kind of like, I don't know, man. I mean, both shows combined did, nearly 1.4 million views? I mean, think about it for a second. And I love NXT, don't get it twisted, but I'm just talking about the overall popularity of professional wrestling. And honestly, obviously, you want to give NXT the caveat by suggesting that it's a developmental brand, so it's not supposed to do high numbers, and that's more on AEW. But, I mean, damn, bro, that just goes to show you the state of professional wrestling right now, bro. Both shows combined could barely do the number that SmackDown is doing right now, when it's now starting to falter in the viewership number in itself dramatically, right? And obviously the excuse to that is, yeah, you can say as much as you want, baseball this, football this, basketball this. I think there's a comment that I seen underneath Dave Meltzer's post about this, which we're going to read and talk about Dave in a minute, because of course this guy here, man. And I thought this right here was a very intuitive point. This guy said the whole point of ratings is to demonstrate popularity. There will always be competition, and it will differ every week. That is the point. Amongst the things on TV, viewers chose other things to watch other than AEW. If AEW was better, more people would watch that instead. And I've been saying that for the longest, and that goes double for WWE also. It's so annoying whenever I hear people talk about, well, I mean, this show was on, this show was on, this show was on. Yeah, essentially what you're saying is wrestling is nowhere near as popular as these shows nowadays. Like, that's fine, okay? Keep that argument, okay? That's the main argument. That's the argument that we should be focusing on. That wrestling isn't popular today. It's nowhere near as popular as the bubble will make you think. But if you're within the smaller niche bubble, when you're talking about AEW versus WWE, which is the main contention of whatever argument we're discussing when talking about AEW, at least in direct competition with WWE, that's my problem with the AEW fanboys. If you want to make an argument, come along with me, because that's always been my main contention from my own personal perspective, is that professional wrestling as a whole, AEW, WWE, TNA, fucking MLW, everything in regards to professional wrestling, it's down. And that's because it's not interesting. It's not entertaining. Maybe certain parts may be fun to us, but overall, it's just not good. It's not satisfying for anybody outside of the fan base who are, hardcore. Man, my head's coming right now. Hardcore fan base, man. But you listen to these people talk whenever trying to boast up about AEW. I swear, I want to talk more about WWE. I honestly do. But man, you guys are just, you're something else, man. You're something else. Look what Dave Meltzer said, man. AEW did 637K. Mind you, I don't think I said this. If I did, then cool, but let me repeat myself just in case. NXT did 702,000 views this week. But Dave says AEW did 637,000 with a 0.19 in the 18 to 49 demographic. NBA did a strong number, and CNN and Fox News were way above usual numbers. Beat everything else. Well, yeah, Dave, yeah, we understand, but again, this argument is so weird, because it's like, it's not even like DVR back in the days, because that was the plausible excuse to use back in the days as to, why you wouldn't watch a show. You'll just go to the DVR and just watch it. And I think I mentioned this in the past, but just to reiterate one more time, if something was hot enough that it had your attention, you're going to do everything in your power to watch it live. If it's not anything that you're inclined to want to watch, then you're just going to skip out on it, and then you're just going to watch it later. Like I said, a couple of weeks ago, when JD Vance and Tim Waltz had their debate, professional wrestling is always going to be number one for me over anything else, especially with the channel. So of course I'm going to watch NXT over the debate. But you know what I did? I came back later and I watched the debate. It's not as if the debate wasn't a priority, it's just not a priority over professional wrestling. So I came back later and I watched it because it wasn't a priority over the entertainment that I wanted to watch at that point in time. How many people do you think is not doing that with professional wrestling? And they're nowhere near dedicated to whatever entertainment or TV show that they're watching at that moment than I am to professional wrestling. How many people you think are doing that right now? There's a lot of people who are doing that. If you have a product that people are going to watch or people want to watch, then they're just going to engage with that product. It's as simple as that. If you don't have the product, then people aren't going to care. And it's like to constantly make so many excuses when all you have to do is just, especially with a guy in the position of Dave Meltzer, who I no doubt has a direct connection or at least communication with a Tony Khan. I mean, he did at one point with a Vince McMahon also 30 or 40 years ago, damn near. But he for sure right now has a direct communication with Tony Khan, and no one's going to tell me anything differently. But obviously, you have a certain agenda within professional wrestling, which is your prerogative. If I was in your shoes, I damn sure would have an agenda too. I would damn sure be pushing things like storylines and characters more so than the wrestling. But obviously, you have a different outlet or a different outlook, of how you like to consume your professional wrestling versus how I like to consume my professional wrestling. And obviously, you're going to push that agenda. You're going to push it. But the problem is, you got to be able to accept the fact that your viewpoint of professional wrestling, yeah, it might get marks. It might get the smarks within the IWC to clap their hands and, hoot and holler. But it's not going to resonate with casual viewers. It's not going to resonate with, say, for an example, people that you would theoretically think you will want to watch the show in order to keep the show healthy enough for advertisers to want to plunk money into the show consistently. You know what I mean? Like, for all the talks about Warner Brothers Discovery and everything like that, I do have a question that I don't think I ever heard anyone ask, and someone can clarify this for me if they want. I understand that they got a boost. I mean, I still think it has more to do with the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery has more at stake within AEW that they get a kickback on by investing this money already into the company. Obviously, to what degree, I don't know. I thought we knew. Maybe we don't. My point being is, it's clearly that they have a stake within the company in itself to want to renew the television deal. But also, I mean, even though they punked as much money as they did within the company in itself, as you guys know, you look at their contracts for their wrestlers, it's more than half of what they spend on their wrestlers already. I mean, it's $170 million, right? Between 150 to 170. Let's just say 150 to 180 million dollars in the TV contract, right? I think that's what I heard, if I'm not mistaken. And the amount of money that they spend on their wrestlers' contracts is like 104 million, I think is what was said, that they spend within the year, right? That was within a year. Let me not say that also, because I don't know if that was within a year. But overall, what I know so far is that they spent over $104 million on talent, right? That's more than half. So I got a question, and I'm pretty sure that Warner Brothers Discovery are, they have this information at hand like I do. Is that the bare minimum that they gave you? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone discuss this. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a substantial boost compared to what they got previously. But, I mean, okay, you're making this amount of money per year. How much more money could you have made per year if you actually delivered in the same way of how you deliver back when you got that original contract? Is what I'm asking, right? Like, I think that's the kind of questions that I want to ask, because they'll always throw back in your face as a combat, well, they got a good contract, they got a good TV deal, and it's like, okay, but like, what is a good TV deal though? Like, what is that standard, right? Like, I'm not trying to put them on par with WWE, but they get half of what WWE gets nowadays, right? For the most part. And it's like maybe a little bit more than half, but typically around that range, somewhat around that range, maybe a little bit more than half though, right? At least compared to SmackDown. SmackDown has those numbers, and they're like getting in the billions, right? Like their entire TV deal, Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NXT, all that combined is over $6 billion. And they only do, like, again, a little over than half, maybe some occasions triple those numbers. And they're in the billions versus, like I said, they only do triple the numbers at most compared to your television show right now at the moment. And you can't even hit $500 million. No, I think they did get, I'm sorry, a little over $500 million. Like, shouldn't that at least be called into question a little bit? Right? Because I think there's a bunch of things that are in play. Not just that, but obviously also, NBA moving from the television network so they have more money to spread around also. It's like, you want to put more money into whatever. If you're investing within a company or you have a stake within a company and you have more kickback to put inside that company to get more out of it when that ROI eventually rears its ugly head, of course you're going to invest whatever little money you have left. I mean, what the hell's the point? I mean, might as well go ahead and do it, right? You ain't going to spend it on anything extravagant or anything. But that's my point, though. It's like, you throwing this up in our face consistently, I don't think has any real merit to it whenever discussing what could possibly be done in the future or what that means right now today in regards to television numbers in general. Right now, that people, you would think, will come back to watch the show so you can keep that healthy number or somewhat healthy number consistent well around the 900,000 to 1 million range that you haven't gotten in over a year and a half at this point. And yet people are making excuses such as the TV deal. People are making excuses such as CNN and Fox. Bro, how many television shows you think aren't going to be affected by that? We're in the election cycle. We're like 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks before going into the general elections where we're going to choose the president. Of course, news outlets are going to be booming right now. That's obvious. What does that have to do with your numbers currently at the moment? Either people are going to want to watch you and then tune into the news later because they can absolutely do that. Not to mention, we're talking about legacy media. Who the fuck watches legacy media like that anymore? No one. I can tell you that straight up. They might get big numbers when, like, for an example, watching a debate or something like that, because that's happening in real time and they're hosting it. But as far as catching up on the news and shit like that, yeah, they may get unusual numbers nowadays, but those unusually high numbers nowadays, I guarantee you, is nowhere near close to what they got before we had independent news as big as it is right now on the internet. It's not even remotely fucking close. Like, if they're doing tens of millions right now, that's probably, I'm gonna assume, 1/5 of what they were getting. They probably dropped more than wrestling has dropped from their original peak. I'm willing to put money on that. Especially CNN. I mean, Fox at the very least. I mean, they're pretty terrible news for the most part also, but at least they have a loyal following. CNN, they fell completely off the fucking map. See what they did to Don Lemon. My point being is, though, like, you can make up as many excuses as you want in regards to what is going on with AEW. In the end of the day, people just don't want to watch the show. You either have a product or you don't have a product. No matter how many excuses Dave wants to make and say this and say that in regards to, oh, well, this right here, this right here, this right here. Bro, like, you're losing to a developmental brand. And yes, like I said, obviously always take into context that they're on broadcast. I get it. It's the CW. It doesn't matter though, because their numbers, even on the CW, are still at a point where you should be beating them. You were still beating them on broadcast, say about 2 years ago, comparative numbers. NXT right now are doing numbers that are not too far above what they were doing on the USA Network. Meaning, broadcast didn't really affect them. It's the same fan base. The same people who watched them on cable came and watched them here. It's not SmackDown. NXT is a niche. SmackDown and Raw are established. That's their flagship shows. Of course, they're going to do way better on broadcast compared to on cable because they have a legacy that connected to them. SmackDown, at that point in time before they got taken off, was around for 25 years now. Of course, they're going to have a built-in established thing going on like that. NXT doesn't have that. It doesn't, and it's a bunch of unknown talent for the most part. They have the same audience that they were fucking with back on USA that they have right now. And AEW are still losing. The whole argument of broadcast, I think, is so weak. I can understand that argument towards SmackDown, and you can see that obviously with how much SmackDown has declined. But seeing the same numbers that NXT is doing right now, based off of the USA Network, all that tells me is that the audience from the USA Network just followed them. That's all that it was. Notice, the people who came to watch NXT when it was closer to 900,000, they're not here now. Now we're back to the original number that NXT was around when they were on the USA Network. This is just the original fan base now. No different than USA. They just migrated over. They didn't grow, they didn't decrease. It's the same number. And you're competing with that USA audience just on a different network. That's, again, all the excuses. You'll blame stations, you'll blame this, you'll blame that, you'll blame this. Brother, your flagship show is getting way less than half, because they started, their peak was around 1.4 to 1.5 million on their debut night, right? You're getting almost damn near 1/3 of what you were getting previously. You can make as many excuses as you want, Dave. The AEW faithful can make as many excuses as they want. It's not good television. I go over this every week. I give credit, and you know, the sad part about it is whenever I talk about AEW, I may shit all over the show 98, 95, 90% of the time. You're going to find at least one thing that I'm going to talk good about on the show. At least one. Last night was the case of two. I disagree with the decision of Mark Briscoe losing his belt to Chris Jericho, but then at the same time, you start to realize that it's the ROH championship, and just more importantly, it's an AEW championship, and none of their belts have any meaning, to be honest with you, at all. Like, literally none of them. They have no meaning. They have so many belts that none of them resonate with me at all, so I really didn't give a shit. It's just the optics of having Chris Jericho win a belt in 2024 that I didn't like. But the match in itself was actually pretty good. The story told in the match was actually pretty decent. I didn't mind that at all. You know what I mean? And there was one more thing on the show that I can't remember that I talked about that I liked also, but that just tells you that also. Look at that. I can't even remember what I liked. Never mind what I didn't like, which was the Jon Moxley stuff. That was the climax and everything. If I can recognize what's bad about the show, what does that tell you? And everything that resonates for me with professional wrestling, 100% guarantee is going to resonate with the casual audience, because I reverted back. I used to be no different than Dave Meltzer with how I thought about my professional wrestling. And then I recognized, even as far back as 2014, 2015, when I started to feel this way about professional wrestling, even as far back as that time, I started to recognize, damn bro, we get this everywhere we go. Every single fucking year, every single fucking month, it's the same shit. And this was back in 2014 when I was thinking like this. We're a full decade removed from when I initially thought about this in my early 20s. And you're still doing the same thing. That's the issue, Dave. That's the issue. The way you think about professional wrestling does not resonate with the fans. And you're making every excuse in the world. And I'm not saying you're directly booking this, but I am saying you're directly influencing this. And you might even be giving advice about this. I wouldn't doubt that either. Not saying that that's the case, but I wouldn't doubt that either. And your ideas aren't working. And in order to compensate for that, you make up excuses as to suggest and justify why this is okay for Tony to keep doing. And Tony doesn't know any better. His playbook is your playbook. So he's going to do it. But my thing is, live by it and die by it. Don't make excuses for it. If you know this is the reason why, then that's the reason why. Live by your mistakes, live by your decisions. And you don't do that. You make up excuses as to why this happens to be the case. It's not to say that your ideas suck. It's just to say that, I mean, in the words of Vince McMahon when introducing the Attitude Era, it's passé. No one cares for that but the hardcore fan base in 2024, which is pretty much wrestling fans non-existent within the main casual audience. And then you ask why your numbers are the way that they are. That's why. That's why, man. But I'll let you guys have this conversation in the comment section below. I don't know what to say, man. I thought I was speaking common sense right now. I don't know. I mean, just the TLDR, people don't watch your show because you're not interesting. No matter what argument you want to use about social media this, YouTube this, where they watch it this, where they want to watch it that. We had DVR back in 1998. That didn't stop anybody from tuning in to watch the Attitude Era and having some of the biggest numbers in the history of the business. And people videotape shows back then just as much as they go look up on YouTube nowadays. You can bet your ass on that. At the same number? Obviously not. It's too convenient nowadays. But don't pretend as if that didn't exist back then either. But of course, like I said, it's convenient to the argument, I mean. So therefore, that's the excuse. Wrestling, man, it's never going to get better until you at least admit that you have an issue. It's like an alcoholic, man. No one can save you if you're not even willing to save yourself. As always, my name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. We'll check in next week, and hopefully it gets better. Deuces, P, Ice.